Good morning. Today is the 27th day of Iyar, the 4th of June. And we're going to be looking at the third Aliyah, the third reading of Parashat Bamidbar. And the entire reading is dedicated to what we call the order of the encampment of the tribes around the tabernacle. And the order is such that they're divided, the 12 tribes, minus Levi. Levi is discounted because he's actually separated to be directly around the tabernacle. They have 3 families plus the priests, and so they're directly around the tabernacle. And the shape is the tabernacle in the middle, and then on each of its 4 sides, north, south, east, west, we have 3 tribes and what we call 3 camps. And this is also the order in which they travel. When they travel, they do travel not with that shape, but the order in which they embark on the journey. So, in the entire reading, what we got is the split, how this is divided. Judah is with Yisachar and Zvulun, and Reuven is with Shimon and, escapes me right now. I should have looked at it first. Reuven is with Shimon and with, who's left? I kind of lost that. Well, we'll skip that. And then we have Ephraim with his brother Menashe and Benjamin. And finally we have Dan with Asher and Naphtali. Now, this is a whole new order. We've never seen this order, because when we look at the tribes, their order of birth is very different. What was the order of their birth? It has nothing. It doesn't have any resemblance to this shape, because the order of birth is chronological. It's like a line. So chronologically, their order was Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yisachar, Zvulun, and Yosef. And finally came Binyamin. Yosef was divided into 2 tribes, Menashe and Ephraim. So what's going on here? Why is this suddenly changed? Now, one could argue that, there's a good reason for it to change, because now we're looking at placing the tribes around the tabernacle. So we need to fill in the area. So it can't just be a line. We're not building the Saudi Arabian line city, right? But still, why isn't the order just, if you have to divide them that way, you could do like in Paris, I believe they're called arrondissement. You have these, like, as you go from the center, you go around like a snail. There could be all kinds of options. What's this idea of dividing them into 4 camps to the north, south, east, and west? So what we have here is another example of something we may have talked about in the past, but I think only in passing, that the Torah is full of examples of a special phenomenon. And this phenomenon is that things are built a certain way, they appear in a certain way, and they seem to be fine. Then they fall apart, and they're brought back together again. The first example is, of course, the creation of the world. At the end of the 6 days, God looks at everything that He created and says, and it all was very good. And yet, at the end of the first portion in the Torah, a portion called Bereshit, God says, I'm going to destroy the earth, because I regret having created man and all the creatures on it. And then at the end, chapter 9 of the next portion of Noach, he sets a covenant between him and all the creatures, saying, I will never again destroy the world. And then we get these special verses that we may have looked at. I don't remember when we were looking at Parshat Noach. We got these special verses that set up a new order of seasons. So we see that even though everything seemed to be perfectly fine in the beginning, it falls apart, and then it's put back together in a new order, and this new order becomes stable. We see this again if we look at, let's take another example, Abraham's life. So Abraham seems to follow God's word. He ends up coming to the land of Canaan, like God told him that I'll show you a land and you'll come to it, and that's where you will flourish, you'll become numerous, and so on. And as he arrives, everything falls apart. There is a famine. He has to go down to Egypt. He's outside of the land that he was promised that this is where he will become successful and blessed. And he has all the adventures that he has in Egypt, which are not any fun. And then even when he returns back to, on the way back, things don't work so well with his adopted nephew. In the end, he does find a way to live in the land of Canaan, but it takes him a long time. And just when you thought everything would be fine, he did exactly what God told him with great sacrifice, leaving his home and so on. But it all falls apart. So this is called, and obviously this is where the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, got his idea that there is a shattering and then a rebuilding in every process. That's how he described the creation, any creation. It's not just the creation of the world. There's a plan, there's how you want things to be, and then you set out to fulfill it in reality. Reality has a way of breaking things apart, and then you have to put them back together again in a different way, but this way is more stable. So this is actually a part of life. This is not just something that the Torah repeats because it wants to tell us the story of what happened. The Torah stresses this again and again, and the sages have a name for it. It's called Klipa Kadma Lepri, or B'reisha Chashucha V'hadar Nehora, which means either the peel precedes the fruit, or in the beginning darkness and then light. Now, the idea here is that when you try to build something, the first thing that happens is that it has to meet reality. And when it meets reality, things don't go the way you thought they would. Now, on the face of it, you would say reality is really tough. That's the reason for it. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is because when you usually set out to build something, and God is saying, it's even true about me, in a certain sense, we'll explain why in a moment. When I set out to build something, I'm full of pride in my abilities. And so my plan seems to be perfect. But I have to learn humility. And humility means that I have to call upon God to help me fix the plan. So there's really always a plan B. It's just you don't know what it is yet. But any plan that you make, in a certain sense, is going to not work out. You're going to have to call upon God to help you. And then plan B is what hopefully will now become stable. A stable reality that you were hoping for from the beginning. Now, we said that even God, when He created the world, did this, but obviously God's not going to call upon God. And we've dealt with this in the past, and we've said that the reason is, when God did this, it was to instill within the world the understanding that it's not the end of the world when things don't work out. In other words, even God, when He created the world, it didn't work out the way He wanted it to work out. It fell apart, and He had to put it back together again. So if it works like that for God, everything that's created in the world should know the same thing, should have the same understanding, not fall into despair, but understand that this is part of the way that the world works. This is part of how we are. Why is this again? Because you really can't build anything if you only come from your sense of pride and ability. You always have to have a sense of nullification before the Almighty, and to make Him your partner. The way that you make Him your partner is when things fall apart, you come to Him and you say, I'm not able to do this myself. I need you to help me. And then you become a true partner in creation. You become someone who is now not just another human being, but a human being who's decided and taken upon himself to join God in bringing the world to its rectification. Thanks for joining today. Hope to see you tomorrow.